Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 4 o'clock, so I'll call to order our Wednesday, February 18th, 2026 meeting of the Capital Area Transportation Authority Board of Directors and ask our secretary to please call the roll.
Here.
Here. Janet Drahan. Here. Mark Krebner.
Here.
James Milo. John Crush.
Here.
Ed Rogers.
Here.
Jack Schmidt. Eric Tan.
Here.
Nathan Triplett.
Here.
And Stephen Magnolia.
All right, with a quorum present, we'll go ahead and proceed. The next item on our agenda is public comments on agenda items. This is the time we set aside during each of our meetings to hear from members of the public on any item on our agenda this evening. If you wish to comment on a matter not on the agenda, we will have an opportunity for that later in this evening's proceedings. We ask that you please consider filling out a blue card to assist our secretary and that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'll have a timer to assist you with that. Under normal circumstances, I would call the blue cards in the order in which I've received them and then ask if there's anyone else who wishes to speak, but I don't have any blue cards this evening, so let me just ask the room. Is there anyone who wishes to offer public comment at this first opportunity on agenda items? All right, seeing none, then we'll proceed to chair's comments. We've got a lot to get through tonight, so I will be brief. My only item is to note that 3 of our colleagues, Derek, Kelly, and Steve, have requested excused absences from this evening's meeting. So I would ask if there's a motion to excuse those absences. Moved by Phil, seconded by Chelsea. Thank you both. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That motion carries. Those absences are excused. Brad, our Chief Executive Officer's report, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, board members. Hello, guests, and hello, members of the public. Top of the list, February 4th, we were able to launch and celebrate Rosa Parks' birthday on Transit Equity Day. This day has picked up steam over the last couple of years and really looking at the inequity that transportation can be viewed in a number of areas, including ours, and how do we do better? It was kind of a grassroots launching. We had a number of guests there and launched the bus, which is now a traveling museum, if you will. It has a number of timeline boards that go through the civil rights activities from the 60s through today. The window has a silhouette of Rosa Parks and also a gold cover on the seat. And it really came together nicely. We had a number of community members, a number of groups that influenced that. And this is just the beginning. We see that this will continue to grow in ideas, ultimately leading to the bus being retired and becoming kind of a museum piece for students. Thank you for those of you that supported this. I've gotten asked by a number of folks where they can see the bus. It is in service in our route system, so it depends as it should depend right now, because we don't put any one bus on any one route for the most part. We're trying to find a better way to communicate with the public where the bus is. We will do that soon. But it's gotten a lot of attention, and we may be City Hall, East Lansing High School, some others have asked for the bus to be parked for a period of time so students and other members of the public can view it. So it's kind of evolving, and we're going to kind of make it into what the community wants it to be. So thank you for that. Second up is state funding. Budget has been talked about. We've got a number of activities, especially in the local and regional area, talking about funding. We are putting together a package to do a second phase on the affectionately named Greyhound building. So we will be putting that package together. You will receive a copy of it, but we will be approaching our local lawmakers to have that discussion and to be able to develop the 2 parcels that we acquired north of the 511 building, the old Greyhound building, and furthering the board's goals of becoming a central anchor in downtown, especially bringing potentially a new partner in that building, which we have not yet named or identified firmly, but we hope to really make that a hub for planning. What's up, planners? but really and seriously, you're going to have a transportation hub where you're going to have the region's planning going on downtown. Why not make it in one spot? One-stop shopping. Last month, I announced that you were going to get a presentation on our solar project and how we might be able to put that in our buildings and capitalizing the return on investment and so forth. We decided that we were going to make that a March presentation because of how full this presentation is. And finally, not to steal Andrew's thunder or Dan's, but it was we got a phone call this morning that said that our second full-size electric bus, this one being produced by New Flyer, is being loaded on a flatbed and will be delivered Monday, the 24th, and will be put into service after Dan says it's okay and meets all the checks. Is that right, Dan? Yes, sir. Okay, that's my report, sir.
Thank you very much, Brad. Questions or comments for Brad on his report? I do think, thank you, Brad. One example of the Rosa Parks and being involved in a neighboring community is, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday, the 28th, it'll be at the East Lansing Public Library from 10 to 2, which is just a really cool example of the opportunities you're talking about. So
Thank you, sir.
thank you to you and staff for all your work on that. All right, last call. Any questions or comments for Brad on his report? If not, then we'll move to our proposed consent agenda, which this evening includes 7 items for the board's consideration. Those are the approval of the minutes of the January 21st board meeting, the approval of the minutes of the January 21st board retreat, the treasurer's report for December 2025, a reappointment to the local advisory council, a cross-boundary agreement between Clinton Transit and CATA, the purchase of up to 8 40-foot hybrid electric buses from New Flyer, and finally, the maintenance, tooling, and equipment for battery electric 40-foot buses contract. Does any member of the board desire to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda to the discussion agenda? Phil?
I request that the E cross-country boundary agreement be pulled off.
Any others? If not, is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda? Moved by Shanna, seconded by Eric. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The balance of the consent agenda is approved, which brings us to our discussion agenda that will now begin with former consent agenda item E, the cross-boundary agreement between Clinton Transit and CATA. Phil, you requested that this item be removed. Would you like to start, and then we can turn it over to staff?
Can you tell us, is this essentially a continuation? How does it differ from what we've done with Clinton County in the past?
So Clinton has been out of contract since August of 24. We've had several discussions with them about how to equitably give transportation between the systems. While those talks are still going on, we were able to reach an agreement that we were able to get service to continue and allow them to continue under our directives and under our board policy, which essentially says that the Ingham County area and the urban area in Lansing is something that CATA plans for. We will continue to plan for, but we have partners in the rural areas as well as private partners. And so it's not an all or nothing. We've got a number of discussions. I think what it's going to lead to in the positives, I'm stutter stepping through my answer because while it's not a perfect agreement, what it does is it continues to provide service across the boundary. And what we need to do is make it better. And one of those goals at the very beginning is on the certification process. This was brought forward by MDOT. And what we're going to do is Clinton is going to provide some ideas on our current ADA certification process, which was providing spec trans certification. We've invited Clinton down. We're going to go up there. We're going to help these folks get certified. And so they will then have the choice between multiple agencies, and then we'll do better planning on the fixed route. So we've got a number of conversations coming up. MDOT will stay involved. We've got a couple of legal folks trying to wade through the uniquenesses of our region. But ultimately, I offer this to you, and I've said this to every group that I've been involved in. Separate but equal transportation anywhere is not equal transportation and it's not equitable. A person riding public transit needs a choice to ride where they want on any public transit. That's the law, and we will not participate in any system that divides people up by where they live or who they are. Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Brad. Did you have other questions, Phil?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Does this cost money or add money to operations or anything?
No.
No.
No, it's purely, we're giving Clinton permission to operate inside of the urban area in Ingham County. We are probably going to lead to a broader partnership where they have not been appropriately reporting their ridership. They've been reporting in the urban area, their ridership as rural. And the state doesn't want to pay the extra for that anymore. And frankly, why would anybody want to pay twice for service? So the state's effectively paying twice for the service. The onus is on us to coordinate that better. We will do so, but the rules you have to follow. And so that's our goal, our ultimate goal. And I don't speak for Clinton, but I will tell you, these are good folks who have really put their best foot forward in trying to provide better service. So we'll get our staff together and we will figure this out. But ultimately, we need to have a seamless system that works for everyone.
Thanks, Chelsea. Other questions on or comments on this item, Mark?
Little historic perspective. Clinton, like E-Tran, is a pain. They are protective of their little turf. They get involved in turf wars. They finally have a millage sufficient to actually provide some service. For a long time, they didn't. They just defended their turf with no money to provide service. So anyway, that's observation one. I mean, as long as Clinton has separate systems and separate employees and so forth, they will probably see CATA as a threat and a danger, and the boundary between the counties is sort of a battleground and so forth. Second, I would just say that I don't like the word fairness, at least if we're talking about fairness to systems. We shouldn't be worried about what's fair. We should just be worried about what's efficient and how the riders see the world. And from the perspective of the riders, the best system is the one that they don't even know that there are two systems out there. CATA Rural Service in Ingham County, I've tried. I haven't succeeded completely, but people shouldn't really know what its boundaries are. You should just call the same number and we should give you a ride. And, it's our problem to figure out how we're funded and what different rules we have to have because of state law. But to the extent we can, there just shouldn't be boundaries that the riders can perceive. And that's the goal. And Clinton County manages to create boundaries and rules that are different here than they are there and so forth. Final observation. I say first that I should just let everybody know I'm an atheist, okay? But Jesus had it absolutely right when it came to transit systems. There's only turning the other cheek. There's only loving your neighbor. There's no point in hatred. All you can do is love them to death because you can't kill them. You didn't say that part, but that's kind of implicit. And that the only thing we can really do, the only tactic that works with these systems is to love them more for all of their imperfections and to accept them for what they are and to work with them and try to lead by example and just be unctuous around them. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I do believe that is the first of your sermonettes in all the years we've served on this board together that actually invoked Jesus as part of the sermonette. So mark that down in the history books.
Quick inappropriate comment, if I could.
Why not?
I just wanted you to know that we love Ingham County.
Ingham County, many years ago, before some of you were born, had its own bus system,
Yes.
which fought with CATA. You
Yes.
understand? We had a boundary. We had red and white buses called Intran, and I wiped them out. They ceased to exist, and we got all the buses kind of the same color, and we got everybody just working together, and we're out of the bus system business, just as MSU is out of the bus business, right? The only way really to have seamless transportation is not to have separate union pools and seniority lists and rules about which bus system gets to run on this route and so forth. From the rider's perspective, there should just be one bus system. You just call the bus and somebody comes and gets you and you follow the rules. So anyway, so Intran, I was hoping we would merge them and call them InspecTran, but that never worked.
Thanks, Mark.
I have nothing else.
Uh, Thank you. At the risk of prolonging this discussion, which I don't think will be necessary here, but I think, Mark, you raise a very good point about fairness, and just in defense of is not the right phrase. But I think what Brad was speaking to, having been in a lot of these discussions with him and Andrew and others and the folks at Clinton, is exactly the perspective you're talking about. Fairness as to the rider, not between systems and arbitrary boundaries, but the fairness and equity issues are about how the rider experiences the service. So I could not agree more. And I believe that that's how Brad and Andrew and others who have been involved in these conversations, that's the lens they brought to it as well. But I appreciate you making it explicit. Any other questions or comments on this item? If not, I would ask if there's a motion to approve the cross-boundary agreement. Moved by Ed and a second by Mark. All those in, any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The agreement is approved, which brings us to our second and final discussion agenda item this evening, a report from our policy committee regarding a policy for immigration enforcement activities. The board has a copy of the policy that has been reviewed and recommended by the policy committee and has also been reviewed by legal counsel for our consideration this evening. Shanna, as chair of the committee, did you have any comments that you wanted to make before we open it up to board discussion?
No, I do not have anything else to add.
All right. Before I ask for a motion, any board questions on this item? If not, is there a motion to approve the policy for immigration enforcement activities as put forward in our packet? Moved by Shanna. Is there a second? Support by, it sounds like everyone, so we'll give it to Jack. I don't think he's had one yet tonight. Any discussion? Go ahead, Chelsea.
Legal counsel reviewed it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just put a note of thanks to staff and the policy committee, given the extenuating circumstances around this conversation and the need for clarity sooner rather than later. Both staff and council and the committee worked expeditiously here to get something in front of the board when they have a lot of other things going on right now. But they recognize the importance of this, and I appreciate their dispatch with it. So Shanna, you and the committee and others, thank you. All right. If there's no other comments, then all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The policy is approved, which brings us to our presentation regarding the comprehensive operations analysis this evening. Brad, do you have beginning comments here?
In the interest of time, I will let Dustin take the wheel. The board had asked for involvement not only on the COA, but in our discussion budget wise last month and upcoming later in the meeting. It is very appropriate that we get an update. Dustin, take it away.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. So like you all know, we've been diligently working on our comprehensive operations analysis, coined CATA's Road Ahead. We've been working with our team here since the end of October, starting the process involving not only analysis, but also public comment, stakeholder meetings and whatnot. So to jump right into it, I'm going to introduce our project team. We have Andrew and Elias here from AECOM and Anne-Marie here from C2G. And after you all.
Great. Thanks, Elias. We can move to the next slide. 1 second. Okay. Very good. No problem. We'll try to make this brief. We know it's a full agenda today, so we'll jump in and go through and give you all an update on what we've been up to over the last 6 weeks to 2 months and where we're heading. Okay, I got you. All right, thanks. So the next slide will be the agenda. Perfect. So yeah, so we'll provide a project overview, talk in detail about the schedule a little bit, and then what we've been working on now. It's sort of 2 streams right now. It's the technical side, and then as well as the public involvement side. And then we'll talk about what's next. So next slide. Project overview, this is really what's called a comprehensive operations analysis. And most transit agencies do this every 5 to 10 years. It's an opportunity to look under the hood, see what's working, maybe where there's some opportunities as well. And so it's a very big deep dive into, we're going line by line. We'll kind of almost provide like a briefing book of every line. So you can kind of look at it and say, oh, this is what it does. This is the productivity. And so it's very useful, hopefully to all of you once we're completed with that. But ultimately, we're looking for opportunities for improvement, whether it's for efficiency, which is a core part of this, ridership and productivity, equity, and then the customer experience. And then what we're going to do at the end is put together scenarios based on funding levels. And we'll always start with a cost neutral, and then maybe if there's less funding available or more funding available, and kind of look out over the planning horizon. Next slide. So why now? It's a great opportunity to do it post-pandemic. Pandemic's been over for a number of years, but travel patterns have changed for both transit riders and people who use other forms of transportation. So it's a really good opportunity to look now how things have changed and where CATA fits into that. Efficiency, optimization of resources, that's really the backbone of a COA. And then looking at those demographic and development patterns and how they've changed and how CATA can leverage some of those changes. And ultimately, the connectivity to the region as well. Next slide. So here's the schedule. I think as Dustin mentioned, we just started. So the top part is public engagement. The bottom is more the technical side. Over the last 3 weeks, we've been in the field. We've talked to bus operators. We've had stakeholder meetings. There was a survey that Elias is going to talk about here in a moment. And then we had some pop-up events with the public as well. And we're continuing on with the survey. That's really just kind of a broad stroke. What do you think about transit? How's CATA doing? But we're going to come back in the spring. We'll make sure that we're here at least for part of the MSU time before they leave. And then we'll have some high-level concepts to share. We're not going to have the details yet. We may have a little bit more meat on the bones, but we want to be able to get some reactions to that. And then we'll come back at the end of the project in the fall with those scenarios and the recommendations to get that out to the public. And then you follow along on the bottom. We're in the data collection. Dustin and his team has given us, and Kai have provided us a lot of data. We've been going through that. We're working on a market analysis report as well as an existing conditions report. So a lot of data coming out of that. We'll then in the spring start putting together those scenarios and service evaluation and work our way into the financial and funding side that will layer on top of that and really kind of hone down and go into our recommendations and implementation in the fall. Next slide. Wanted to share quickly just something that we've been working on. This is the market analysis. This is really the data in play and some of the metrics that we've been looking at, and just as kind of a taste of what that is. And so oftentimes transit really likes these kind of metrics. They do well in these environments. So we're looking at densities, whether it's employment or residential. We've been looking at projected growth, activity centers, existing ridership patterns, which is great. And not all transit agencies have that data. So thank you to CATA for having boardings and alighting data, because it makes our job a lot easier and it provides a better product for you as well. And then we're going to look out forecasted travel patterns, and then we'll put together this market analysis. So if you go to the next slide, this is the last slide on our technical side, but just wanted to share with you a map of some of the things that we've been seeing. So you see the yellow color, that's showing the darker the yellow transit potential. So that's really density, whether it's employment or residential. And then transit need is the darker blue, and that's really more of those demographics, zero car households, poverty levels, and so forth. And when they go together and you have a high level of both, it becomes dark green. And those are some areas that we're looking at as far as like when you're thinking about corridor level or high frequency. And those are, primarily, not surprising, by MSU and the central part of Lansing and some of the areas around it. But you'll also see little nodes out into the suburban areas too. And then when you see like a lighter blue or lighter yellow, those should also have service, but maybe we'll look at different levels and different mix of types of service. Next slide. So I'm going to hand off to Anne Marie, and she's going to give us an overview of public involvement.
Thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to be able to look at my slides here. So we've had a busy couple of months of engagement so far. This first phase of engagement that Andrew mentioned a couple of slides ago, we're really seeking feedback from the public and stakeholders on the challenges that you have with your existing system. And also describe their needs and wants for improvements for the future. So to get feedback, we went out and did pop-up events to kind of meet people where they are. So we went to the Lansing Transit Center. We also went to Michigan State's Transit Center as well on campus. And we talked with people for a couple of hours at each of those events. And then we also met with bus operators during their shift change so that we had a chance to just kind of catch them real quick, talk to them, get their feedback. And then on here, we show too that we've met with partners and stakeholders in person and virtually as well. This does not include all of the ones that we reached out to, it's just the folks who could participate so far in the process. And then in addition to these events and meetings, as Andrew mentioned, we have the bus operator survey and then also the public survey. And all of this input will feed into our overall analysis of the existing system and kind of help guide the direction of the ultimate recommendations in the plan. And so if you go to the next slide, yep. We'd like to share some just initial feedback that we've gotten so far during those conversations. The bus operator survey and the public survey are still open, so we don't have the results finalized for those yet. But during our conversations, the bus operators noted that they've encountered capacity issues along some of their routes, especially on MSU campus, where they sometimes have to leave students behind if it's too crowded on the bus. They also mentioned that there's a mismatch of service and routes in some areas, notably Jolly Road, Lake Lansing as examples, where there might not be service in some areas, but that might be need for some sort of like route redesign. And there are also challenges when it comes to driving itself. So including accessing private lots and then also road design challenges that sometimes make it difficult to maneuver the bus. And then as mentioned, we met with stakeholders in the public. We kind of combined the trending things that we've heard back from those groups of folks so far. And we've gotten some similar sentiments back that CATA is a very responsive partner. So when there are challenges that arise, people mention time and again that CATA listens and they respond and they have a solution that they're working with their partners for those solutions. So that was really positive feedback. People also mentioned that they'd like to see improved regional coordination and reducing transfers between routes so that people can kind of get directly to where they need to go without having to transfer when that's possible. Better alignment with job centers and shift work schedules. So we talked to some stakeholders who mentioned where, especially there's those manufacturing jobs, sometimes the shift schedules don't work with the bus service. So there might be people who can get to work by bus, but maybe can't catch the bus home. Aligning with future land uses. So we heard people talk about, new developments that are upcoming and just making sure that, we're looking at where there's new residential happening, new jobs happening, and just making sure that there's service to those areas. And then increasing reliability and direct connections to major centers. So some stakeholders mentioned that, it takes an hour to get from downtown East Lansing to downtown Lansing via the bus. So they're looking for, how can we directly get somewhere and also faster? And then increasing reliability and direct connections. Oh, I already mentioned that one, sorry. Strengthening the airport connection. So we talked to a stakeholder from the airport and how we can better improve those connections. Capacity challenges on MSU routes. So again, we not only heard that from the bus operators, but also from stakeholders in the public, and then just more frequent service in general on a lot of the routes. So that was a lot of feedback that we've gotten so far. And again, we're going to be looking at those survey results as well, but just wanted to share some of those initial things that people have been sharing with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Elias, and he's going to talk about what's coming up next.
Hi, everyone. So you heard kind of what we've done from Andrew and Anne-Marie, but what's coming next is we are taking a deeper dive into all of CATA's routes and services. So this is just one example on the screen here for Route 25, and this is just one piece of the puzzle for this route. So this is on boarding and alighting on the route inbound on weekdays. And you can kind of see there are some patterns where there are a lot of people getting on the bus up by Chandler's Crossing and getting off on or near MSU. And some of the other stops in between, there's a lot less. So we're kind of looking at this for every single route and service. And then this is going to help us kind of understand what opportunities there are to make routes more efficient and to better serve our riders. So once we do this, we're going to take those opportunities. We're going to go back to the public. We're going to give them two kind of ideas that are different and say, what do you like and dislike about these? And then we're going to put something together and bring that back to the public in the fall with some final recommendations. Next slide. So we are wrapping up a survey. It ends on Friday. We have already kind of hit our target for how many people we wanted to respond, but we would love if you can push these out to your networks. More feedback is always better, so please help us get that number up even higher. Anne-Marie talked a little bit about the stakeholders that we talked to. We would love to hear if there's anyone that we missed, anyone that we need to talk in the future. And we'd also love to hear from you if there are any priorities the board has that we should be keeping in mind as we go through this process. So you can feel free to answer now, or you can send us feedback at another time, whatever works for you. But we'd love to hear from you. So thank you. We have 382 this morning.
Thank you. Questions, comments from board members? All right, let's start with Eric and then John.
I would just encourage you, if you haven't already, to make sure that you reach out to the Lansing School District. They partner with us on a lot of things, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. John?
Thank you. Can you share with us your familiarity with the area? Are you from Lansing area and Michigan State University, your background?
I live in Detroit, and we have a pretty much mostly Michigan-based team. Not a lot of people from Detroit, from Lansing. But I think that's sometimes a good thing. Sometimes people who have a little bit less familiarity with the service are going to see things that you're not going to. And
Go Green.
And that's also why we're doing a lot of outreach with, riders, stakeholders, and with the operators as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Ed and then Phil.
I use Route 13. If you had anybody from Route 13 give you feedback.
So we haven't gone through all of the responses in the survey yet, but we do ask people which route they use most often. So we will kind of pair that information to the routes as we're looking at them, and we will be looking at that route. We'll be looking at every single one of them to understand different patterns of ridership and efficiency.
Thank you.
Phil and then Shanna.
What is your methodology for reaching out to riders and reaching out separately to stakeholders?
So a big part of that is working really closely with CATA, and the team there, the marketing team, has been really great. We have been able to see when they do social media pushes for the survey, the number of responses we get spikes dramatically. So that's one important thing. There are other CATA channels. There are, using the existing ways that CATA talks to riders is always the best thing that you can do. So there are posters on buses, there are posters at transit centers. We went and talked to operators as they were doing pullouts, and we've reached out to stakeholders, and we did in-person and virtual meetings with them in different groups at different times so we can get a lot of attendance.
Thanks, Phil. Shanna?
I know you're more focused on the routes, but as part of those questions, and I just scanned the survey, are you seeking or getting feedback on features of the buses or the bus stops themselves and what that does in terms of riders' decision? Yeah, you are. Okay.
Yes, we are. I think safety and sort of comfort and amenities are things that we're thinking about.
Bicycle access and things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shanna. Other questions or comments? I know you mentioned it briefly, but can you talk about some of the ways that you've attempted to gather feedback from riders who might not have ready access to the internet?
Yeah, so we went to the transit center downtown and to the one on MSU, and we were at each of them for about 4 hours. And we took surveys with people. We gave them paper copies of surveys that they could come and bring back to the transit center. And there's also an online option as well. There are also, I believe, the demand response drivers have copies of the surveys to pass out as well.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from board members? So you have a couple of suggestions on the slide there about what we can do to assist, and you provided a little bit on the timeline. Are there things, if the board members have additional feedback, they have a chance to noodle after this meeting, reach out to you and provide that about stakeholders or whatnot?
They can all go through me, and I'll make sure that gets to the project team and the course.
I appreciate you making it simple, Dustin. Thank
Yeah.
you. Go ahead, Brad.
Mr. Chairman, the timing of this presentation was because, well, we want to make sure you're informed of the process. As you heard, there's a lot of conclusion being reached this fall. However, in our discussion at the last board meeting, there's a lot of budget implications, which we are going to be talking to you about and why we wanted to lead with this. So the next time you hear about the COA is not going to be late in the summer. This is going to be a parallel process. And to the extent that we need the consultant involved or information from Dustin to parallel this budget discussion, that was also the point which I wanted to emphasize as we move into that next discussion.
Thanks, Brad. All right, let's call John, did I see you have no, all right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Now, thank you so much for your time and your presentation and all the work that's going on behind the scenes on this. It's appreciated. All right. That brings us then to old business. We have one noticed item of old business, this evening, and that is budget discussion. Brad, would you like to kick this off before we hand it over to Andrew?
I would like to thank the consultant team for presenting today. I've served on several private consultant teams in the transit planning world, and I think this may be the highest concentration of transit planners that we've ever had in a board meeting. So just very excited about it. So my apologies. Oh, on to the next item, right, Mr. Chairman? Okay. In seriousness, we go back to the budget considerations, and what we have before you is really new. Each year we have a retreat. We bring to you the implications of the upcoming budget that will be delivered to you in June and voted on in the fall. The budget revenue is down. And so Jim gave you a presentation last month. We have continued that discussion, that deep dive. Jim will be available for questions. I asked Andrew to work with the planning team to fulfill your, I'm not stealing your thunder, Andrew, I hope, but you asked us a very specific question of those scenarios that Jim presented. How does that look if we started digging into some of those scenarios? And Andrew's going to walk you through some ideas, and then we have some questions for you on next steps. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad, and thank you, Andrew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all again. As Brad mentioned, we are prepared to share with you a number of service change ideas that could dovetail with the presentation that Jim shared with you last month. Go to the next slide, please. So in the slide behind me here, you see a brief recap of the 4 options that were presented for consideration. Much of my presentation will focus on options 3 and 4. Just a quick review. Option number 1 is status quo, business as usual, revenue at 64.4 million and a projected expense level of 67.8 million, thus a cash flow deficit of 12.4 million. Option 2 involving administrative attrition and reduction. Our cash flow is reduced to 11.1 million. And then, as I mentioned, we get into options 3 and 4 involving service changes, cash flow estimated between 10.7 million per year, or in option 4, 8.5 million. So what we did, and I want to first give my thanks and gratitude to Jim, Kai, and Dustin, as well as Craig and Todd on our operations team. This was a heavy lift, and we took back what we thought we heard from last month to provide you a number of options for consideration. So we're going to get into some details with respect to service, and I would ask that if you have a question, please let me know as we go along. So what types of services were considered? We looked at the span of service, frequency reductions, how the routes are structured, how they are scheduled, time of day efficiencies. We looked at these to maximize service, and we also looked at utilization. Some have relatively low utilization, meaning it's easy to get an operator. It's a time of day where we have plenty of folks in the day room. Or with respect to fleet resources, we either need a lot of fleet to handle that route, or it's a relatively small number of buses to just keep the route in service. Next slide. Starting with our large bus considerations, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this chart, but I do want to go through each option for you. We have 9 large bus options for your consideration. First, we have 1 bus removal Monday through Friday. And I should point out that we did not identify a particular route. If you wanted us to go back, we'd be happy to do that. But we just want to give you an idea of how much savings you could attain by taking 1 bus off of the street Monday through Friday. 1 bus removal on Saturday, 1 bus removal on, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday. Option 3, total elimination of service on Saturday. That alone would save us approximately $3.5 million alone. And then we have another option of service elimination on Sunday. Late night route 1, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights would save approximately $141,000. 46 and 48, those are our limited buses. They do 1 trip in the morning and 1 trip in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. 46 goes to Mason. 48 goes out to Weberville and Williamston. I should note that since the pandemic, we have not seen ridership fully recover on either of those limiteds. The last 2 examples I should note for you are just examples. These are services that we were asked to provide that were not budgeted and are not in our service. And you could see the overnight Route 1 warming bus thus far has cost approximately $8,600. And the Let's Community Center, approximately $2,900. Next slide. So as I mentioned, 9 different options for your consideration. Certain concepts, please keep in mind, like the 1 bus removal, they can be scaled back. So again, it's not just 1 bus from Route 1. It could be 1 bus from Route 1 for X number of hours in the day, and then another bus from another route later in the day. All the concepts can be enacted independently. And just keep in mind, respectfully, there's some overlap, right? So let's say if Sunday service were eliminated, it could be eliminated and that's a net savings. But if we took Sunday and put it on Saturday, you're not going to realize the full savings of Saturday going away. As presented, the large bus changes could yield between 3.1 and 6.4 million in planned service savings. Small bus, we looked at a number of options. Most of them included service elimination of small bus. We looked at these again based on low utilization or if the service is intensive on utilization, again, namely fleet and operator availability. Here you see a chart with the small bus services that we've considered. LotLink, Night Owl, which though they are MSU services, they are provided and paid for by CATA, not the university. The holiday services, currently we operate demand response service on Christmas, 4th of July, Easter, and Thanksgiving. And lastly, the Mason Ready Ride. I should note that LotLink, Night Owl, and the Mason Ready Ride are services that our contractor, Transdev, provides. That is why in the top right of my table, you see a difference in the hourly rate. Approximately $85 per hour, which will be the projected hourly rate for our contractor in FY27 versus our marginal rate of approximately $92 per hour. Next slide. Under small bus, we summarized 4 different options for consideration. As I mentioned, 3 of them are provided by our contractor. The holiday service is provided in-house by CATA operators. As presented before you, the operational savings would yield approximately $450,000 to $804,000 in savings per year, looking at those 4 options I mentioned. Next slide. All right, we talked about larger bus or fixed route, as well as some of our small bus routes. Here behind me is a look at all of the services that we discussed, 13 options in total. All combined, as I mentioned in the previous slide, would yield approximately $6.4 million in savings per year. As a final summary, and I touched on some of this already, large bus savings. Again, with respect to options 3 and 4 from last month, we're looking at approximately 3.1 to 6.4 million in savings, depending on the options we choose. Small bus alone, we're looking at approximately $450,000 to $800,000 in savings per year. And then lastly, combined, when we look at different options of combining small bus and large bus changes, 3.5 to 7.2 million in projected savings per year. Before we move to the next slide, I would just like to share a little segue with you. Contracting small bus. This comes up every once in a while. As a reminder, much of our small bus service is provided by Transdev. Simone, thank you for being here tonight and all of our board meetings. We appreciate it. But in the industry, and I've been part of transit for 24 years, we frequently hear the cost savings of contracting paratransit. And it's important to note that much of our paratransit is already provided by Transdev. The smaller portion that we directly operate, which I'll show you in a moment, does not necessarily yield as much savings as some might think. So we're going to move into that portion of the presentation. We looked at moving all of our existing directly operated small bus to the contractor. We looked at this because, namely, cost savings. When you look at the net difference, what we pay Transdev per hour versus our marginal rate in-house, it's approximately a $17 per hour savings. Next slide. Behind me, you see the services we provide by our CATA operators, ATU 1039. Spectran, I should point out, it's only a small portion, 47,000 hours planned per year, and that costs approximately $600,000 to $800,000 per year. Meridian Ready Ride is directly operated as well, 11,500 hours per year, and the Delhi Ready Ride at 11,000. Protection, which is in row 4. Protection refers to budgeted hours that we plan to have operators sit in the day room or break room to protect or cover open work. And we give a range there. That $40 low number on the range accounts for the top rate operator pay, excuse me, plus fringes. And then if they are operating the work at overtime and you add the fringes, that gets you closer to the $80 per range. All told, we are projecting a savings of 1.2 to 1.8 million if we were to contract out these services. Some of this I've already touched on. We operate 3 different routes in-house. Some of our Spectran, primarily the non-ambulatory Spectran in the cutaway style buses, Meridian Ready Ride and the Delhi Ready Ride. We're looking at a net savings if we were to contract of approximately $17 per hour, and that would yield a savings of approximately 1.2 to to 1.8 million. That range is a little bit of a sliding scale. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's not an instant savings. If we were to go this route, there is not an instant savings realized to CATA. It would scale up based on operator attrition and operations no longer needing to backfill people who may leave through attrition. Jim, is there anything you'd like to add on that? Okay. Sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I know we've had a lot of conversations about that. All right, and the last slide, a little summary for you. When we look at large bus, potential savings based on the options presented, 3.1 to 6.4 million. Small bus options, 450,000 to 804,000. And contracting the remaining directly operated small bus would yield approximately 1.2 to 1.8 million dollars. That is the end of my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Andrew. Before I open it up for general questions for the board, would either you or Brad like to provide the board some insight into what feedback would be most useful at this stage in the process, so that we can focus our comments on things that will help you build a budget to present to us eventually?
Yes, thank you. I don't know if you wanted to take that or not.
It is yours, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay.
Don't fight over it. Either of you can
No.
answer.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would say that this is a lot of information to digest. There's a lot of services. We offer a lot of robust transit service on the fixed route and small bus side, and we're very proud of that. And when you boil this down to simply hours and dollars, it can kind of take away the full personal value of what we provide. So I would ask, as you answer your questions, be thinking about where we want to land versus what we provide today versus what we want to look like next year and the years to come. It's a lot to digest, but I would just stress we think about the whole service as you ask your questions. And everything is interconnected. So if we were to pull one bus off Monday through Friday, that will have implications on not just the frequency of one route, but it could have implications on what we call pulse times when all the buses get downtown. It could impact the ability for someone who relied on that bus we pulled to access other services. Be thinking holistically. It's not an individual or independent approach. Everything is connected. So I would just ask to keep that in mind.
Thanks, Andrew. Brad, did you want to add anything to
The
that?
only thing I would add on in being more direct in the conversation from last meeting is that we want staff to be able to do their job for you and bring back to you ideas based on direction at the policy level. And you were clear last meeting that there was a lot of information. All of these budget scenarios have us running in the deficit. And there was even the question of, well, how would you balance the budget? And so what we tried to do was give you a scenario 3 that really dug in and showed you how deep that would go. And the further you go into 4, 5, and so forth, you're getting into very specific cuts that will have devastating consequences. So what I would ask is, knowing that direction, is that we whittle this down to, okay, we're going to continue bringing you back scenarios. We'd like to refine that down to an area of the options presented to concentrate on, and we'll get into very specific ideas, adding on to 3 if you so desire, and bring that back to you again. What I would like to avoid respectfully is debating over individual items. We should do this instead of that. We should do this route instead of that route. Let staff do that job for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. I think Shanna's got the first question, and to help us with the conversation, Dan, could you put the scenarios slide back up on the screen? And then Shanna, the floor is yours.
Mine was a question on the contracting directly. You had in there the protection hours, and I can't remember what this potential savings was, but if we directly contracted with Transurb, I mean, wouldn't they also build in protection hours? Has that already been kind of incorporated into that? I mean, that would be an additional contract. So it's not necessarily that Or maybe not, maybe that's already been considered.
So, no, I appreciate the question. So with respect to protection, every year when operations builds their budget, they have separate buckets or columns for things beyond the scheduled service, right? Protection is just one of those things. Typically, we budget 40 to 50,000 hours per fiscal year. Based on recent years, we are seeing approximately 7 to 10,000 of those hours are to cover open work on our Spectran. So you are correct. The contractor would have to provide for Spectran as well. The current structure with Transdev and the way that agreement is written is they are paid on the built runs and supplemental runs from a first pickup to last drop off or gate to gate. So we're paying them for buses that actually leave their yard. Whereas here we have to account for paying for people to sit in the break room. They have that kind of baked into their hourly rate. So when we pay Transdev each month, and you are correct, it would go out for bid, likely be another contractor, could be Transdev, maybe not. But in any event, that would be part of the discussion. Do they bill us for protection? It would be up to them. But currently, we only pay for the runs that leave their gate.
Okay. So that could be, that's our cost, but that wouldn't yield as much. That contract might be higher if they build that in some way.
Correct. And again, we gave you a range for consideration. It's based on the current agreement we have with Transdev. This would have to be part of a negotiation and other things. But right now, when Transdev sends the invoice, there is not a separate protection invoice. It's for runs for each service type that goes out.
Awesome.
Other questions? Phil?
It would be helpful for me, at least, if we could break down these cuts and the number of riders impacted by them. We started the meeting off talking about the riders. I mean, the board here is for about the riders, these employees that are here, it's all about the riders. That's our deliverable. And I think we got to be kind of, lack of a better word, mercenary in this and say, which cuts will impact the least amount of riders? And that's the framework I would want to take it from. And I doubt they're all the same. As you mentioned, some have low ridership and more than others. And I think we should look at those. That's my first comment. I'd like to see those numbers that way. Secondly, regarding the proposal to switch all of our small bus transit to outside contractor, I would be opposed to that. Philosophically, based on the comments I got from our riders in Meridian Township, who are by and large been extremely happy with Ready Ride. And I would fear, because of the quality of the drivers we have here, I would fear contracting that out. It's a really important service. It's for usually their most vulnerable riders. And I think that's something to protect. Now, should we scale back on the amount of paratransit we provide if we find some of that is costing us exorbitant amounts compared to others? I would be open to that. But the idea of wholesale passing it off to a private contractor for lesser costs, if it were half the cost, it'd be a different story. Both rates are pretty high. One is 15% lower than the other, 20%. It's not enough for me to risk the quality of those services that so many people rely on.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Other questions? Eric?
Hope this second, having rider data attached to this would be helpful. And then also a question about contracting the Ready Ride service. Do you anticipate there being any sort of pushback from the union about changing that service?
Short answer, yes. We have a proud tradition among our operators that when they bid, it's all seniority based. We hire new operators and we tell them on day one that you will be trained to drive a large bus and a small bus, and they are paid the same per the labor agreement. We have operators. In fact, it wasn't long ago at some of our board meetings that we had operators up here expressing their desire to only bid small bus or only bid big bus, and their seniority allows that. I know that operations and planning tries to build rosters that are consistent. So it's consistently Spectran or consistently Ready Ride or consistently large bus. So yes, we have a number of operators with very high seniority who only prefer to drive Ready Ride or Spectran. I can foresee if we were to even carve out some of those services that we would have to have multiple conversations with our ATU.
Before I ask if there are other questions, Brad, did you have feedback on either of those you wanted to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that I want to address to make sure that we're meeting the board's expectations, but also balancing the two comments that you just made. I want to offer somewhat of an alternative to diving into the routes and trying to determine the effect on passengers, because the direction's very clear to us to maintain as much service on the street as we possibly can. Number two is where I would be most comfortable landing, as I said last month, because we will start cutting into administrative costs, travel, things that are non-rider based. Once we start into 3, we're getting into efficiency issues. And what I would propose is this to you, is we can give you a range on each of these options. We can give you a range of when you start getting into efficiencies, the percentage that you're going to see ridership drop. As you move into 4 and 5, it will increase dramatically. There is no question that you are going to have devastating consequences to service if you go past 3, no question. So we can quantify a range. What I want to avoid, and I'm saying this respectfully, what I want to avoid is picking through and saying, this is going to hurt more than that. I want to give staff and the professionals who know a lot more about this than I do, and the COA people, giving you a solution to give the least impact to that. And we can give you a range, but what I want to avoid is spending the time on getting down into the nitty gritty and saying, if we take a Route 1 off, we anticipate that that's going to hurt these people and those people. And the reason I say that is back to what Commissioner Grebner said about fair service. We can quantify things that make this work, meaning we can raise revenue by increasing the fare. And we can guess what the elasticity on fare increase is going to be, but we don't know. We just know it's going to be devastating. It's not a good idea at this point, in my opinion. So I don't know if that addresses, we will, when we come back with the direction you give us on 3.4, 3.2, 3.5, wherever you want to land, we will get into specifics and give you a range of idea of the rider impacts. Is that appropriate? Okay.
If I may, please.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I appreciate the question, Eric and Phil both. Just as an example, we did put together a scenario. This is something just that I wanted to point out to the board with respect to option number 3. In option number 3, we called it limited service reductions. We did put a package together that would equate to option 3. This is by no means a solid recommendation, but just something for you to keep in mind. If you wouldn't mind, Dan, could you scroll to slide 9 on the bottom right? Sorry, I keep turning around. I want to make sure I speak into the mic. So here we have our list of a la carte options that I presented a moment ago. Under option 3, we would achieve limited service reductions under option 3 if we were to choose from this list the following: Route 1 late night, Lot Link, and Night Owl. If those 3 services were to be eliminated, I believe, Jim, that met the threshold in our exercise of meeting option 3. So these are services that Lot Link is approximately, when we look at fiscal year ridership, Lot Link was approximately 1,100 rides for the fiscal year. Night Owl was at 824. That's roughly, when you break down the number of academic days, that's roughly 3 to 4 people per night. And then the late night Route 1 total ridership for FY25 was approximately 8,900 rides. And again, that's just a, for instance, those three services to get you in that option 3 ballpark.
Mr. Chairman, something else I should add while we're on this table that I was going to say earlier. You'll see 2 at the bottom that are italicized. Those are brand new services that we were asked to do. And we were also asked and appreciate the conversation yesterday, John, which I'm going to reference in a second, with MSU. And we were asked to put more tripper buses out on campus during this very, very cold period. That's essentially unbudgeted service that we do when our community members call and we take care of it. So there's some flexibility in here where there's a challenge on both sides. Some of it isn't just eliminating service. Some of it is increasing revenue. Not to put John on the spot. We had a wonderful conversation with the president yesterday. John set up an introduction and we had a great conversation, and to not put you on the spot. And we did talk about some of these cuts that were going to be coming up here. I'm not speaking for you, John, but I am speaking for you. The president was very complimentary of the service. We were very complimentary of our relationship with the university dating back to the 90s. But they want more service for graduate students in the evening. And we went over these services that are on the cut list here. And the president asked John and the chief to look at their budget and bring back possibly some help for this. So it isn't necessarily just cutting service. It is trying to get a balance and a fiscal package put together where we can say a year from now, or in the fall, or a year from now, we may be facing these if we don't get additional revenue in. And so there's a balance here. It isn't just cut service and we're done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we're going to get more requests. We're going to get more requests for more service that we're going to have to meet.
Thanks, Brad. So I think I've got Jack, Mark, and then Shanna. No, Shanna.
I'm sure this question was answered last month, and my apologies for not being at the meeting and potentially treading water that we've already tread. But kind of getting at the point, Brad, that you were just making, if you could remind me where we draw deficit from, how long we can do that for, and just what the likely, I understand this involves federal predicting what various levers of government will do, which is an imperfect science, but like how likely the outlook on that picture changes if we did nothing.
You okay with me answering this, Andrew?
Of course.
Jim? I'll let you know. I like these guys. If you remember a year ago, we were talking about banking our cash and investeds, and that fund is very high right now. So we're a year ahead of others. And what Jim did is he really laid out the projection. As you always see, it falls off and it's coming closer. So last year we said we could weather the storm. This year, that option 2 is being careful, but we can weather the storm. But we get dangerously close a year from now, having to make some tough decisions about real service cuts. And the discussion is instead of just planning this year and kicking the can down the road, what are we facing if it doesn't change? And you know how I'm going to answer, what do you see in the crystal ball at the federal and state level? And we're preparing for the worst, but I can tell you that Cleveland, we were on Jim was on the phone with Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor we talked to, they're all bracing for some pretty serious cuts in a year. It doesn't look great. The other thing is that there is some connection to other conversations we're having, whether at the policy level, MSU on the revenue side. And I say that because it isn't just the expenses. The LBO is central to what we do. Next month, we will have our legislative conference. All of the union will all be joined down here talking to our legislators about the investment statewide in transit. But you also heard me say in the initial part of this meeting that the state's paying 2 transit authorities to do the same work. Okay, that's coming out of the LBO. We have to, and that's why I say on on the revenue side, that the LBO, we're getting word that it's going to slightly be down again. Well, we've got to protect the LBO and invest more in that. And we've got to lobby the federal government to whatever result we're going to have to invest more. I think eventually, my opinion, sir, I think eventually, when you look at the New Yorks, the Bostons, the big players, I'd love to hear from my consultants, but not on record, by the way. From the big cities, you'll have catastrophic failures of the transit system and them turning in rolling stock back to the federal government if we don't have an additional investment at some point in the near future. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah.
Insofar as that's possible, right?
Yeah. I think we have to go a little deeper than we did last year instead of, and know that a year from now with no change, we are making some, the conversation, gentlemen, about contracting. I don't want to contract that service. That's very proud of the relationship we have with the union. But a year from now, if we don't have the revenue coming in and we're facing this, we've got some tough choices that we're going to have to make. And I think a lot of this is going to have to be on the table.
Mark?
Side issues. First, I just want to say that the two references to LotLink and Night Owl were fascinating, because just doing a little arithmetic, if I understood them correctly, that means the cost to CATA is well over $100 per ride now, and it's like 200 and something. Did I get that right?
I haven't done the exact math, but you are correct. It is a very high cost per rider service.
And we're not going to talk about those in detail. I mean, I'm not trying to like single those out the way I like to single out annoying little things. But we ought to be realizing that this is a dynamic situation and that our riders have options, and we ought to be thinking about their options, and we ought to be thinking about what we can do to make those options more available to them. And especially if we're going to be talking about paying $200 per ride in the middle of the night, why in the world aren't we talking about making things work with the TNCs? And the answer is, well, that's not these consultants. That's not part of this study. It's never part of this study. We have to realize that it's insane to spend, if we're spending, I was shocked to just hear whatever that number was, 200 something for LotLink, to go across the MSU. For God's sakes, have them call me. I will give them a ride. I know it's not legal. I'm not licensed. Well, certainly. I mean, you could buy the people cars. I mean, they probably don't drive, but whatever. The point is, we ought to be thinking about options, alternative options, particularly late night coverage and weekend coverage and so on. We ought to be thinking about what those options are, even if we don't fund them, and what can we do to fund them. Now, that's not this study. I understand that, but that's the fluidity of all this money. We should realize that we can't just act as if we're living in a vacuum that pays $200 plus to move somebody 2 miles across the MSU campus. Lordy, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Chelsea.
Because when I worked as a sophomore at MSU, I worked at a restaurant and would have to close, right? So I would use LotLink because it was incredibly unsafe to get from where my parking spot was in the middle of nowhere, crossing train tracks, and the things felt unsafe, at least. I agree with you, that's crazy expense. But what I'm wondering, so the reason I needed to take or use LotLink was because the bus didn't ride late at night, even though I was right near Meridian Mall. So I'm just wondering, is there, I don't know what, if that's happening to more than one person, right? Is there other changes? And I know that's what the OCA will do, but I think you're spot on that maybe there could be adjustments depending on how people are using these services, that it's not necessarily like taking away, maybe it's just altering. So I'm gonna make that comment.
Thanks, Chelsea.
make sure you're updated.
Any other questions? I have two quick comments, and then I want to make sure that Brad and Andrew have a chance to talk about next steps here briefly. My two quick comments are, well, respecting Brad's wish not to get too deep into the minutia of the particulars of anything here, I do think that the lot link and night owl conversation, while completely agreeing with Mark's comments about expense, illustrates one of the reasons why I'm leery about looking at this conversation just through the lens of the number of riders on any given service, because you eliminate lot link, and from a CATA perspective, you've eliminated any available option for those folks. So we need to go outside. So the ridership isn't just the thing there. Whereas if you look at eliminating a bus along Route 1, our highest volume route, those folks will still have access to service. It will just be less frequent service and more inconvenient. So where is the greater harm between those? Those are questions that I think we're going to have to wrestle with at some point, but why it's not quite as simple as just ridership. There's more to unpack there. With that thought in mind, we sort of concluded the last conversation with those four scenarios and trying to give staff some direction of like where in the quadrant we're shooting for in a budget. And I will just say for my part, I haven't moved based on any of this from where I was at the last board conversation, which to me looks like we're obviously going to have a budget that includes up through 2. And the question in my mind is just how far into that 3 area of service reductions is appropriate at this year, given the fact that we can spend into our reserves this year without completely exhausting them, while some of the things that Brad is talking about work out and we see what's happening with the state budget picture. So it's not an exact science, but I'm at like 3, give or take a little bit one direction or the other right now, if that's the kind of feedback that staff is looking for. I can't imagine under the circumstances us not looking at the attrition and the reductions that were presented in 2, but I'm not ready to sign on to, we're in a period of uncertainty, so let's start making draconian cuts now, assuming that everything breaks against us, because historically that has not been the case, and we still have runway to make draconian cuts should they become necessary if nothing does break in our favor. So I'd ask if others have concluding comments that they want to make, but if you're looking for a where am I on the quadrant, that's where I'm at. Other comments, Shanna?
Yeah, I will just say I'm probably the same, maybe 2.75, maybe 3 minus, somewhere in there. But I do just want to reiterate, I don't want to be in the minutia of any one of those things. And I think that balancing you said is really important. But I am going to reiterate Mark's, thinking about this creatively and what are some of those partnerships. And if there are challenges we have with that in current labor agreements and whatnot for this year, I think all of that has to be on the table, and the conversation and the planning for that, not just, hey, maybe we'll do this someday if we start to get draconian, but it's like, we're going to do this because it's smart anyway, or it's starting to move where the industry is going. I want to have that on the table and have that conversation for real.
Yeah. And let me just say ditto to that too. And I think especially there are some of these services, and Mark, I know your point is much broader than this, and I don't disagree with it. But if we're considering eliminating a service that is people's only option now, I think that that puts even more pressure on us to say, okay, what's the alternative here for these folks? And whether that's talking to the university, does the university want to pick up that service or do it? Is it a TNC? And it's not just the university related services. If we were to eliminate the only option that folks have to get from Mason to downtown now, or Weberville to downtown, then we should be having a conversation about what do we tell those riders we're cutting off about alternatives? Is it some piece? So I completely agree, Shanna, with your comment. Mark?
I'm sort of a 3+ or whatever, but I think the important thing is the atmospheric decision that it's a continuing process, and we ought to be working up all these possibilities. And even the ones we don't end up choosing, we ought to have worked them up because we ought to be thinking about them for next time. Also, remember that we have our own strange captive TNC whose name we forget, Flit or something. What's our? He won't tell us.
You have to give me a little more, sir.
The one that gets from MSU to the airport.
Rides.
Rides. I'm sorry, RYDZ. See, we've forgotten. We've forgotten that we have one. God knows what we're paying per ride there. I probably don't want to know, but we're already experimenting a tiny bit with a TNC, and maybe it's an appropriate substitute for, or maybe there are ways to use it to leverage to deal with a lot link night owl thing and some other services too, assuming that it's not 3-digit numbers. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. All right. This is obviously going to be an iterative process. We will hear plenty more from staff as the budget is being put together, but are there any other critical comments right now? If not, Andrew, Jim, Brad, everyone else, thanks for all your work on this. I know a great deal this was very succinct. I know that there was a lot of work behind the scenes to get it to this level. So thank you all for your effort.
Of course.
To be clear, we're going to take if you don't
Yep,
mind,
please.
we're going to take a deeper dive expectation wise, a deeper dive into 3, pushing a little further beyond 3, looking a little deeper, not so much 3, getting into ridership impacts, getting into potential revenue, I think is fair. Maybe even going into some non-service budget issues that we can start articulating for you and bring that back to you next month under old business if that's appropriate.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
All right, that brings us to new business. We have no notice new business to come before the board this evening, which brings us to public comment on any item related to CATA business. This is the time we set aside, not just related to our agenda, but anything related to CATA. Same rules apply. Please consider filling out a blue card to assist our secretary and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Again, I haven't had any cards submitted in advance, so let me just ask, is there anyone who wishes to offer public comment at this second and final opportunity this evening? Come on up, Steve.
Be as brief as I can, folks. Thanks for having me. Steve Solis, President, ATU Local 1039. Challenging times ahead. Simple message. Maximize the assets that we have. Whatever that is, that is. Guess what my team hears from me? Exactly that. Maximize the assets we have. Good question you asked earlier, sir. There's discussion that'll, I'm not gonna lie to you, there's discussions that'll come off this. There's hand wringing people's jobs, to worry about their employment. Nobody wants to see CATA be anything but the best. And whatever that takes, we're going to deliver. Challenges are ahead, but the simple goal, and I said it 100 times, next month is 36 years for me at CATA. I care just a little bit, okay? Maximize the assets that we have, and whatever that is, that is. We trust drivers to drive the bus, mechanics to fix the bus, and you all to make the best decisions with the information brought to you. I'm here to help. A lot of knowledge on the system. Lots of folks within the building have ideas. Let us know what we can do. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments, Steve, and for your partnership. We appreciate it. Anyone else who wishes to offer public comment at this second and final opportunity this evening? If not, then there being no further business to come before the CATA Board of Directors, we are adjourned at 5:23 p.m. Thank you all.